I haven't always been happy in my life. As a matter of fact, when I was 3 years old, my father was a shepherd also. He'd gone out to take care of the sheep and never came home. They told us that a lion, well, he never came home. My mom, she was a wonderful woman, but when that happened to my dad, she became so overprotective. She wouldn't let me go anywhere. When I was 10, two of my brothers, my father's brothers, Amnon and Jacob, they decided it was time for me to get out from underneath my mom's skirt tails. So they were shepherds, and so they took me out with them. We weren't just any shepherds. We were what's called priestly shepherds. Maybe you've never heard of that, but I'll explain a little bit more. And so this life went on. You know, in this particular time, we were doing our herding, our shepherding was outside of a little town called Bethlehem. It was a place where it wasn't very big. But I can remember, it's about 34 years ago. I was 10, as I said. And at this time, Caesar Augustus, he was one of the first emperors that ever really just considered himself to be a god. That was against our religion. You don't ever put yourself in that place. And so what he did was he called for everyone to come in. They had to be counted, taxed. They called it a census. Really, he just wanted money. He wanted to build an army. And so that's the reason why they all came in. And Quirinius was the governor over our area at the time. And on this particular day, you know, of the season, people from all around came because you had to go back to your hometown. You couldn't just go to any place. And so they started coming in. Now, listen, as shepherds, we stayed away from cities as much as we possibly could. All those people. And, you know, we had to go in from time to time to get some supplies. But we really tried to stay, especially as I remember during this time. Bethlehem was overrun with people everywhere. Oh, I was so thankful to be a shepherd. You know, a shepherd, you could just do what you wanted to do. You could be free. Well, as long as you didn't have to take care of the sheep. But it was a good thing. It was a hard life, but it was fulfilling. We made ends meet. But as I said, we were priestly shepherds. So the sheep we took care of, just not the kind that you go down to the meat market and buy meat. These were special sheep. Being outside of Bethlehem, our sheep were specially bred. And they were the ones that were prepared for the sacrificial system. And because of that, we had to take extreme care with our lambs. But I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. I remember that night. It was like it was last night. It had been a long day. I mean, we always worked hard. It wasn't necessarily laborious work, but I mean, it was full time. I mean, have you ever tried to watch sheep? Always flitting here and there, off, and you had to make sure that they were taken care of because these were special sheep. And so we had finished the day. We had finally gotten the sheep settled down for the night. We'd had our dinner, and we ourselves were just starting to unwind. The night was so clear. You could see every star. They were like twinkling lights set on a black velvet background. Oh, glimmering, shimmering. There's a bit of a chill in the air, but it was quiet. That is until suddenly an angel appeared. Needless to say, we were startled, afraid. But come on, have you ever had an angel appear? Wouldn't you be scared too? And this just wasn't any angel. We learned later that his name was Gabriel. He was one of the big dog angels. As a matter of fact, there were 3 of them. And he was one of the 3. He was the one that made announcements of special events, special occasions. If God needed something told, he'd send Gabriel. Well, that's just what he did that night. And that night that was so quiet and so dark now was filled with, all I can explain it was with the glory of God. I mean, it was so bright you couldn't even see the stars. And then he began to say this to us. He said, "Behold, today is born a child in the city of David, Bethlehem, the Son of God." And when he was telling us these things, that what had to be done, we were astounded. I mean, we'd heard about the Messiah, but who'd ever thought that he would come in my lifetime? And when he finished saying everything that he needed to say, then he just, all these other angels showed up. And they were all around. It was a multitude of angels. It was the army of the Lord that was all around. Suddenly, they were declaring the glory of God. As quickly as they came, they left. Oh, what do you do? We were so shaken and so excited and so marvelously taken back. We had to go see it. Would you? Wouldn't you want to see what they were talking about? So we took off down over the hill, down through the area, and headed into that town that we didn't want to go. And believe me, it was crowded. But where do you go? With all those people, where do you go? Well, see, the angel Gabriel had said, you will find a child wrapped in swaddling clothes. That was the first clue. And lying in a manger. Well, we knew what swaddling clothes were. Didn't I tell you that these were special sheep? The special thing is that the lambs that we took care of, the ones that were being prepared, these lambs in. And we carried these lambs to a place of safety where ultimately they would be sacrificed. You see, we knew when the angel said, swaddling clothes, we knew that it wasn't just cloths that they had torn off their body, not something that they had brought from home. It was special. It was a lamb being cared for and prepared for sacrifice. Second clue that we had was that he would be lying in a manger. Oh, how many stables do you think that's in Bethlehem? But see, we had taken care of a sheep. See, there was a special tower in this area. And this tower was used during a certain period of time where the sheep would give birth to the lambs. In this particular season, it was prepared and purified. And so when it said a trough, it may have been the very trough that we had fed our sheep in. And so we went down, and right as we got to the town, we knew where to go. You see, star didn't lead us. Some people think that the star guided the shepherds that night. The star wasn't even in the sky that night. That star that everybody talks about didn't come for almost 2 years. It was the star that led the wise men that traveled, the magi that traveled from a great distance. For us, we were doing it real time. We were the first. When we made our way to the stable and we looked in, everything was so quiet. The animals were not stirring. And there, laying in that feed trough, in that manger, on top of prepared hay, wrapped in those swaddling clothes, there lay a baby. Oh, he just wasn't any baby. I've seen babies, but he was different. I don't know what made him different, but he was. When we had worshiped, when we had given him our homage, we quietly stepped back out of the entrance of where the stable was, not to disturb. But that was the end of our quietness. We told everybody about what had just happened. Oh, it was so exciting. You just couldn't contain it. That was about 34 years ago. But I never forgot that night. As I grew older, I started hearing stories. Oh, they weren't just the kind of stories that you sit around a campfire and tell at night. We had those. We had those that we shared, and these were different. These were stories about a miracle worker. They call him the Messiah. Yeah, remember I told you we had heard about those things. I remember that night, going back that night, it was said of Mary that with all the excitement that was going on, it said that Mary kept those things in her heart. She pondered them. She just rolled it over and over and over. I mean, if you were called to give birth to the Son of God, how would you handle it? Well, the stories continued to grow. One time when I was out traveling, I met a group of people, and they were just coming from a wedding. Wow. Said they ran out of the good stuff. But this Jesus, he took water and turned it into even better stuff. And then we heard stories of people being raised from the dead, not just one. We heard about blind eyes being opened. We heard about people that could not walk to get up and run and leap. We heard about so many things. So unbelievable, but were they unbelievable? If you were there, would you believe? I guess seeing is believing, right? Most of the time. This Jesus, he walked on the water. We'd gone down to visit some friends in this place called Canaan. It's relatives of ours. And while we were there, we heard about this man named Lazarus that had died. And so we didn't know Lazarus, but our relatives did. So we went with them in order to pay respects to them. That's what you do with dead people, right? You go look at them. You pay respects. You honor them. You can't do anything for them, but you honor them. So we had made it down, and all of a sudden there was this commotion. Oh. And I looked, and there were his two sisters. I think their names were Mary and Martha. They were walking, and they were walking behind Jesus. Jesus, I hadn't seen him for 34 years. Came down, and he walked right up to the edge of where the tomb was at, the rock across the front. And he stopped, and everything hushed. And then I saw him look up. And then he said something that I'll never forget. He said 3 words that changed my life. Lazarus, come forth. They rolled the stone away. And I couldn't believe my eyes. This guy in grave garments came stumbling out. Jesus told him to take the stuff off, and it was Lazarus. Oh, my life. It was that day. It was that day that I laid aside my staff and I took up a walking stick. I became a follower of this Messiah. Time went on. My life had been forever changed. And it was probably, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. One of the Roman soldiers that I had met, one of the times when I was out in the fields, Roman centurion. We struck up a friendship, not that they really liked being friends with us Jews, but, you know, when you need something, anybody can be friendly. And he had just been at a crucifixion. It was happening quite frequently, but this was different. He told me that he stood there and he watched all the activities that were going on. And he saw the Messiah take his last breath. The Messiah breathed his breath out, and the centurion breathed life in. He was changed. You see, you cannot meet the Messiah, the Son of God, and your life not be changed. That was 34 years ago. I never forgot that first night. But I also have not forgotten what change has taken place inside of me. I want you to stop for just a moment, and I want you to think about your own life. Are you one of these kind that just, it's easy to flow with everybody as long as they're going the same way? Or are you one of those world changers? You see, because our world changing begins with one inside of us. And the influence, then the effects move from person to person. That's who God called us to be. The Messiah is no longer here with us on earth, but he lives. And he said that because he lives, we can live also.